This Barbie is from the 18th century and she's here to review Barbie from 2023. Hello everyone and welcome back to my Chanel. So today we're gonna talk about the Barbie movie. We're a bit late to the party, but whatever. This video contains a lot of spoilers, so be warned. Also, a big thank you to everyone who voted in the poll that I put up. The Oppenheimer review will be up next week, so do subscribe if you don't want to miss that. And yes, we're covering both. That was kind of originally the plan, so I'm really happy that you guys do want to see both. Now, for Barbie. I think the best way to sum up the Barbie movie is it tries to be so many things and it ends up being not a lot. It's aesthetically beautiful, very Barbie, very much on point, nostalgic. The costumes were lovely. I especially love the homage to the original first Barbie doll design, dress design. But when it comes to the plot, the script, it all just kind of fizzles out in a very meh way. One observation that I have is that the movie could have been a lot better if it was just a lighthearted comedy without them trying to put in all the extra layers and depth. Because of the satirical tone of the film, everything deep felt either underdeveloped or just a bit out of place. Barbie at the end of the day was a comedy, it was self-aware, it was also making fun of itself. At the same time, though, they wanted to address some bigger topics that I felt just didn't fit. As for the director, Greta Gerwig, I might be biased here, but I just don't seem to vibe with her movies, so there might be a bit of subjectivity here. I don't want to make this as a general statement because every movie is its own thing and should be judged as such. But then again, every director also has their own distinct style, and what I'm noticing is a bit of a pattern in the sense that her movies just don't seem to be my cup of tea. For example, Little Women, which is not her original movie, but it's an adaptation. That one was not my favorite, but also Lady Bird, when it came out, I remember it was praised to the skies, but I just kind of felt, I didn't hate it or anything, it just didn't really strike a chord with me as it seemed to have with a lot of other people. And in the Barbie movie, I couldn't help but notice that coming-of-age motif that Gerwig seems to like. I think one of the possible interpretations of Barbie is as a film about a girl growing up, coming of age, entering adulthood or the real world, and realizing all the stuff that comes along with being a woman, with that being a possible interpretation to some degree. But that's exactly my point. The movie tries to be both a satirical comedy, but also tries to shoehorn in these deeper topics that just kind of feel underdeveloped. But let's start in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie, the intro to the film, it was very cute. Very Barbie, very pink, very pretty, very nostalgic. You have Barbies living in their Barbie land with the stereotypical Barbie, aka Margot Robbie. For a girl who grew up with playing with Barbies, also I couldn't find any Barbies somehow, I just found my Monster High dolls. Regardless, for someone who grew up with Barbie, I found that it really brings some childhood memories to life. The set was lovely, the costumes were really cute, really great. As long as we stayed in Barbie land, it was kind of okay, but the second Ken and Barbie left and went into the real world, it just all kind of fell apart for me. So the whole premise is that Barbie is living her best life with other Barbies in Barbie land, and then one day she gets thoughts of death and flat feet. And she comes to realize that her owner in the real world is probably going through some issues, and that's reflecting onto her. So in order for Barbie to fix herself, she needs to go to the real world to help her owner with her issues. Barbie and Ken go into the real world where Barbie is immediately objectified and she realizes all the misogyny of the real world. But Ken is loving it. He's finally feeling appreciated as opposed to how his life in Barbie Land was. And he decides it would be a great idea to bring the patriarchy into Barbie Land. Because Barbie Land is basically run by Barbies and Kens are just there. She finds her owner Sasha, but it turns out that it was actually Sasha's mom Gloria who had been playing with Barbie and who has been having these issues. So Ken goes back, takes over Barbie Land, and separately Sasha, Gloria, and Barbie also go back chased by Mattel executives on roller skates. When they come back, Barbie realizes that the other Barbies have been brainwashed by Kens into Stepford wives, and then she, Gloria, Sasha, and a few non-brainwashed Barbies have to restore the Barbie power. Gloria makes a cringy speech that snaps Barbies back into believing in themselves. They take control, put Kens back into their place. Barbie discovers that she actually doesn't know who she is, so she embarks on a self-discovery journey at the very end of the film, which somehow the first step towards that is Barbie going into the real world and going to the gynecologist. Yeah. So where do I start? There are no proper villains in this film. Like, you have the guys at Mattel, the CEO, and all of them. They never feel like a real threat. In fact, take them out and you basically have the same movie. They don't do all that much. And on the second thought, Sasha is also kind of just there. I can't remember if she did anything really that progressed the plot or anything relevant. The Kens don't feel like a threat either, because they're just so dopey and incompetent, yet somehow still competent enough to have taken over Barbie Land. Now, the depiction of men in general is that they are either stupid simps turned stupid misogynists, real-world misogynists, silly, goofy, incompetent bosses at Mattel, or comic relief side characters with 5 seconds of screen time. Or their Alan. Now, the Ken doll is an accessory to the Barbie doll, and that could have been an interesting angle to take. I'm not against this premise. It could have been a good conflict if executed well, which I don't think it was. Mainly because Ken's struggles are not really taken all that seriously. Maybe in the very end, where Barbie apologizes to him, but even so, that apology kind of bothered me, because Ken is in love with Barbie. He lives for her attention, but she doesn't care. She doesn't give him the time of day. She's just like, oh, you want to come to my party? Yeah, sure, whatever. But still, at that point, maybe you could say, oh, she didn't realize that she was hurting him. She didn't realize how much he liked her. But the thing is, in the end, Barbies take back control by flirting with their respective Kens and then pretending to be interested in another Barbie's Ken so as to make their Kens jealous. Absolutely terrible. So here, Barbie knew exactly what she was doing, and she was doing it on purpose. She knew that she was hurting Ken on purpose. So her apology in the end just kind of feels like, yeah, I'm sorry I did that. I mean, the end kind of justified the means, so I had to do it. But I'm sorry. Can you see that I'm sorry? I said I'm sorry. And yes, they do decide in the end that neither patriarchy nor matriarchy are that great. And they say, okay, we're gonna change a few things here in Barbie Land, but the Barbies will still stay in charge. We'll just give Kens a little bit of things to do so that they don't rebel again. So yeah, the movie ends with Barbie and Ken going on a self-discovery journey to find out who they are individually. And that message isn't horrible, but it's an odd choice because, first of all, Barbie and Ken are counterparts, as toys. And it doesn't make that much sense to center individualism in a story about Barbie and Ken. But also it doesn't make for a very satisfying ending because you are basically where you started. You're still leaving all the strings loose. Everyone is where they were in the beginning. They are just kind of self-aware now because they realized, oh, actually, I should find out who I am. Apparently not much self-discovery was done throughout the movie, except that self-discovery needs to take place. And I need a moment to talk about that speech, Gloria's speech, about the struggles of being a woman. I'm gonna put it here, I'm not gonna read you the whole thing, but basically she goes, it's impossible to be a woman. You have to be thin but not too thin. You have to be a boss but not mean. You have to be a career woman and a mother. Always be grateful, never be rude, never step out of line, never fail, never show weakness. It's so hard to be a woman because we're tying ourselves into knots so that people would like us. And how horrible it is if this is also true for a doll representing a woman. This is the speech that made Barbies snap out of their brainwashed state. It made them realize who they truly were inside. The issue I have with this is, how did this apply to the Barbies? When did they get the feeling that they weren't good enough? when in the movie did they go through these struggles and questions? Okay, so the main Barbie had a bit of an existential crisis because she realized she is not as great as she thought she was. She's not as perfect as she thought she was. But never has any of these other Barbies cared about thin but not too thin, boss but not too mean, doing everything so that people would like them. Where in the movie were these struggles presented as Barbie's struggles? Their brainwashing made them subservient to Kens, but that's about it. You could say that they lost themselves. How did the Kens manage that is never explained, but whatever. But it's never that struggle of, I have to jump through so many hoops to make people like me. Because in the Barbie land, they had girl boss Barbies, President Barbie, Barbies of all shapes and sizes, and no one ever had any problem with that. Even if you take this as a metaphor of a mother telling her young daughter who is coming of age and feeling all the societal pressures and expectations. Even if you take this as the mother realizing, you know what, I'm gonna stop putting pressures on myself so that my daughter doesn't pick up the same pattern and, she shouldn't be dealing with this either. I still don't think it works because Barbie, or any of the Barbies, again, didn't experience this. So it's not a really good kind of comparison to make. And I've also heard the argument that this was supposed to be a speech from a female perspective, but it was also meant to apply to men as well, to everyone. And frankly, I don't see that, because if this speech was meant to apply to everyone, then it didn't reflect in the way that it was presented in the film, or in the way that they treated men in their film. These are struggles of being a human, but if they wanted to show that this applies to Kens as well, aka to men, they could have set the scene differently. Don't backtrack now and go, well, actually, this applies to everyone and you just have to be an intellectual and read between the lines. Well, in the context of the movie, it wasn't presented in a way where it was implying that this applies to everyone. If anything, it was implied that the men are responsible for some of these struggles that the women allegedly have, according to that speech. For a lot of people, when we grow up, we learn that we can never be perfect and that we shouldn't listen to society telling us that we should be X, Y, and Z. I don't think most adults are under this intense pressure that they must always be perfect. That's more like a toxic high school environment where you feel like you can't step out of line for fear of no longer being popular or for fear of getting bullied. So I'm not saying that this speech could ever be not cringy, but perhaps it would have been a better idea to give a speech similar to that to Sasha. Maybe because, a teenage girl realizing that looks and appearances aren't everything. It might hit differently if a teenage girl was realizing that you can't please everyone and that it's okay to be yourself. And let me end this with the ending, because what the heck was that ending? Why? I think this is what happens when you have a movie that doesn't have any proper resolution for the characters. They went through the whole movie discovering that they need to discover themselves, and by the end of the movie their journey has just begun and they have discovered nothing except the need for self-discovery. Anyway guys, let me know what you thought of the Barbie movie if you've seen it. Leave your comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss my Oppenheimer review and other future videos. And do let me know if anyone is interested in seeing how I made this dress that is inspired by, well, it's kind of a replica of a museum dress. I don't know if you guys are into that sort of stuff. I might make a short video on it anyway. But yes, take care guys, and I will see you soon.